It had been 2 long years. 2 years since we'd stood around the same folding table laughing over who brought the best potato salad. 2 years since the kids had played freeze tag on the lawn while the older cousins argued over spades and dominoes. 2 years since Grandma's voice had floated over the noise, trying to bless the food while Uncle Joe cracked jokes about the Holy Grill. Life, as it tends to do, had pulled us all in different directions, some of us across state lines, some of us into new jobs, relationships, or just the daily grind that somehow saps away time without you noticing. And of course, there was the pandemic. The lingering lockdowns, the canceled flights, the video calls that just weren't the same. But finally, we found a weekend early summer. Not too hot, not too buggy. School was out, vacation, time was cleared, and no one had any major emergencies. That alone felt like a miracle. Once the date was locked in, we went all out. My place had the space, the yard, the big driveway, and, most importantly, the blessing from both my neighbors, on either side. Well, most of my neighbors. But more on that later. We sent invites, coordinated flights and carpools, reserved a tent from the rental place 3 towns over, and booked a bounce house the size of a small castle. We wanted this reunion to feel like a celebration. Not just a catch-up session, but a real, joyous, we-made-it-through party. After what the world had been through, and what each of us had been through privately, we needed this. The week before the reunion was a flurry of phone calls, delivery checklists, and text threads with too many emojis. My cousin Monica oversaw the menu. She doesn't trust anyone else's taste buds. Uncle Joe handled the grill station, of course, because no one argues with a man who owns 6 spatulas and refers to himself as the Burger Whisperer. The kids' committee, aka me and 3 other parents, arranged for everything from sprinklers to sidewalk chalk to popsicles. We even hired a DJ, who was really just my younger cousin Marcus with 2 speakers, a Spotify premium account, and a dream. On Friday morning, I stood in the backyard with a clipboard, watching a couple of workers set up the massive white tent. The thing looked like it belonged at a wedding. Next came the tables, the chairs, and the red and white tablecloths we all agreed gave it picnic with flair energy. The bounce house arrived shortly after, its giant inflated turrets wobbling as the air machine chugged to life. Monica showed up with trays of cold pasta salad and enough lemonade to hydrate a stadium. Everything was falling into place. Neighbors peeked out and waved. A few even came over to offer folding chairs or extra coolers. The vibe was warm, buzzing, anticipatory. Except for one house. Across the street, behind closed blinds and an immaculate flower bed that hadn't changed in 3 years, Karen was watching. And I mean watching. It started small, just the twitch of blinds as the rental van parked out front. Then again when the bounce house was inflated. By the time we laid out the chairs and coolers, Karen was standing on her front porch in full view, arms crossed, mouth pursed, her foot tapping like a metronome of disapproval. The kind of presence that sucked the air out of a happy moment. We knew her type. Every neighborhood has one. Karen, whose real name I will not dignify in writing, had taken it upon herself to become the self-appointed guardian of suburban order. She wasn't on the HOA board officially, but that didn't stop her from patrolling the sidewalks like a mall cop with a clipboard. Her past crusades included filing formal complaints about unsightly seasonal decorations, read, a Halloween, pumpkin left out until November 3rd, excessive wind chime use, and child graffiti, which was just sidewalk chalk spelling out, Happy Birthday Grandma. Needless to say, we'd had run-ins before, but this time, something was different. Her posture wasn't just irritated, it was electric with barely restrained outrage. I could almost see the imaginary HOA handbook clutched to her chest. She wasn't waiting to see if we'd violate a rule. She expected it. Maybe it was the number of cars starting to line the curb. Maybe it was the fact that the music had already started playing while the kids danced barefoot on the lawn. Maybe it was the fact that joy, real, loud, unapologetic joy, was something Karen simply couldn't stand. Still, I ignored her. The last thing I wanted was a distraction. Today was for family. Let me take a moment here because I know some people reading this might think I'm exaggerating. Surely, you say, she can't be that bad. Oh, but she is. Karen once left a note in a neighbor's mailbox because their backyard string lights were creating an ambiance inconsistent with the historical tone of the block. She took pictures of holiday guests' license plates and emailed the HOA president to investigate possible renters. Once, she filed a report because someone put out their trash bins 8 hours too early. I wish I was joking. And me. I was no stranger to her petty vendettas. Last spring she called to complain that my recycling bin wasn't facing the curb the correct way. Another time she flagged my nephew's lemonade stand for unsanitary food service. It was a cup of lemonade. On a sidewalk. Sold. To his grandma. We're still laughing about that one. But the thing with Karen is, she's persistent. She believes she's doing God's work, or at least the HOA's, and no amount of reason or kindness has ever gotten through. So when she stood there on her porch that morning, arms folded, phone in hand, I knew she wasn't going to let this reunion pass quietly. As the reunion began in earnest, kids squealing in the bounce house, relatives hugging each other, like it had been 10 years, and the music floating through the summer air, Karen's intensity only increased. She disappeared from her porch for a while. I assumed she had gone inside, but about 20 minutes later I noticed her walking her small, anxious terrier back and forth along the edge of her driveway. The poor dog looked as tense as she did. She clutched her phone tightly in one hand, pausing occasionally to snap photos of the street, of the tent, of the cars. At one point, she even walked a few steps onto my lawn, squinted at the food tables, and then turned back abruptly as if the sight had offended her. By now, more guests were arriving. Music was playing, laughter rolled out in waves, and the smell of grilled burgers filled the air. Then she did it. I saw her do it. She made the call. I caught the moment she turned her back to the street, phone to her ear, pacing like a lawyer about to deliver closing arguments. Her face was animated. She gestured toward the house, then toward the street, her mouth moving quickly. She didn't even try to hide it. I didn't say anything. Didn't walk over. Didn't acknowledge her. Because what could she do? We had the permits. We had the paperwork. Everything had been cleared. The music was within city ordinance. There was no alcohol, no fireworks, no violations. We were just happy. And maybe that was the real crime in her eyes. Still, I felt it. That sinking, heavy quiet that comes before something drops. And sure enough, about an hour into the reunion, just as I was helping my cousin set up the last tray of chicken salad, I heard the unmistakable sound of tires crunching slowly along the curb. Then came the chirp of a two-way radio. Then the unmistakable creak of 2 police officers stepping out of a patrol car. Silence fell across the yard. Kids stopped bouncing. My aunt froze mid-scoop with a bowl of potato salad in hand. The music didn't stop, but it suddenly felt too loud. Eyes turned toward the street. Conversations halted mid-sentence. I stepped forward, and just as I opened my mouth to speak, a voice behind the grill beat me to it. "Hey, McNeil! Thought you were off today." The voice that cut through the tension was loud, familiar, and full of swagger. It came from Uncle Derek, who was flipping chicken wings over the grill with one hand and pointing his tongs toward the curb with the other. "McNeil," he called, out, as if greeting an old college buddy instead of the town's police chief. "What, they got you working Saturdays now?" The taller of the 2 officers, broad-shouldered, clean-shaven, and wearing sunglasses that reflected the entire yard, like a mirror, cracked a grin. He pulled off his glasses and nodded toward Derek. "Didn't know you were back in town, man," Chief McNeil said, his deep voice booming across the lawn. "You still burning meat like it's a military operation?" Everyone laughed. Even the kids, who'd inched closer to the grill out of curiosity. Some of the tension bled out of the moment, like a balloon that had been slowly leaking air. McNeil stepped further into the yard, shaking hands, exchanging greetings. Turns out he wasn't just passing by. Chief McNeil was family, his grandmother. Had been our grandfather's second cousin or something like that, close enough that he got invited to every reunion, far enough that most of us forgot until he showed up in uniform. He'd been a patrol officer the last time we saw him at a cookout. Now he wore 4 stars on his collar and ran the whole precinct. He looked around at the tent, the tables, the music setup, and the rows of cars parked neatly along the street. "Looks like y'all doing it up big this year," he said, folding his arms. Monica stepped forward, hands on her hips. "Well, it's been 2 years. And we got the permits. Everything's legal. Karen's already mad, so let's just skip the drama. This time." That got another laugh. Chief McNeil nodded, a knowing smirk tugging at his mouth. "She already called 3 times this morning. Claimed there were open flames, unauthorized parking, and noise violations." He looked at Uncle Derek. "That, you she said was threatening the residential character of the block with a flamethrower?" Derek raised his tongs in salute. "That'd be me." McNeil laughed. "I told dispatch to mark it as low priority. Figured I'd stop by anyway, since I was headed to my sister's. Wanted to make sure y'all didn't need backup. Or ribs." He took a plate, grabbed a water bottle from the cooler, and sat down next to Aunt Louise like he belonged there. Because he did. And across the street, standing behind her flower beds like a ghost in a beige cardigan, Karen stared. Her jaw was locked tight, her phone still clutched in her hand. But her call, her threat, her expectation that uniformed officers would descend on us with ticket books and clipboards, it had evaporated. Chief McNeil wasn't here to shut down the reunion. He was here to enjoy it. If you've ever seen someone try to hold in a scream with just their face, that's what Karen looked like. The more people arrived, the more agitated she got. By early afternoon, the block was lined with cars, none of them blocking driveways or fire hydrants, mind you. Just family showing up on time, dressed in bright colors and smiles, carrying Tupperware and folding chairs and excited kids. Karen started pacing. Then she began taking pictures again, this time of license plates. She crouched awkwardly behind her front bushes, trying to be sneaky, but her bright peach sweater stood out like a flag. My niece, Brianna, even got a video of her accidentally triggering her own sprinkler system while crouching. She slipped, got soaked, and scurried back inside, dripping and furious. "She looks like the angry auntie from a Scooby-Doo episode," Brianna said, laughing as she edited the clip. But this wasn't just funny anymore, it was strange. Unsettling. Karen wasn't just annoyed. She was unraveling. She came out again 20 minutes later, not to talk, not to engage, but to place 3 orange traffic cones at the end of her driveway, even though no one was near it. She stood there for a full 10 minutes, arms crossed, watching as if daring someone to park near her curb. Then came the ultimate move. She wheeled out her trash bin, days before pickup, and dragged it into the middle of the street, trying to block traffic like some sad little barricade. When Cousin James politely rolled it back to the curb, she came out screaming, "I have rights! You can't touch my property!" That was the first time the party truly paused. Kids stopped mid-run. Adults froze mid-bite. Even the music hiccuped. For a second. And then, like a perfectly timed sitcom punchline, Chief McNeil, still holding a rib bone, stood and called across the street. "Karen, please stop harassing my family." Dead. Silence. Then a few quiet chuckles. Then full-out laughter. Karen turned bright red and stormed inside, slamming her front door hard enough to rattle the blinds. A few hours into the party, after the grill had been fired up for the 3rd time, And someone had started a dance circle near the bounce house. A new car pulled up along the curb. Sleek, black SUV, tinted windows, government plates. I didn't recognize it at first, but as the door opened and a young woman stepped out, tall, elegant in navy slacks and a white blouse, there was a collective inhale from the older relatives. Emma, my cousin Emma. She had moved to D.C. years ago, straight out of law school. We hadn't seen her since before the pandemic. She worked for a senator, last we heard, some big legislative aid job none of us could quite explain. And standing next to her, also stepping out of the SUV, was a man in a dark suit. He looked familiar. Strong jaw, trimmed gray beard, a presence that made people stand taller without knowing why. Then someone whispered it. That's Chief Reyes, the chief of the fire department. Not just a city fire department, the state fire chief. As it turns out, Emma had not only gotten promoted, she was now working directly with the governor's Public Safety Commission. Chief Reyes had become her mentor, and she invited him to the reunion because he'd become like family. Now he was standing in my front yard, shaking hands, smiling, grabbing a plate. And across the street, Karen reappeared, mouth open, phone back in her hand. Karen must have spent the next 20 minutes pacing her porch like she was auditioning for a courtroom drama. She kept staring at Reyes, then at the fire truck that showed up briefly to drop off a gift basket. Yes, a real fire truck, and then back at us like we were the ones causing a public safety crisis. Eventually, she made her move. She came out of her house in full neighborhood watch mode. Visor, clipboard, walkie-talkie clipped to her belt, and a rolled-up HOA handbook tucked under her arm. She marched up the driveway like she was storming Normandy. This gathering, she began, loud enough for the block to hear, is a violation of several HOA policies. There are too many vehicles. The bounce house has no inspection certificate, and I was told open flames are being used without proper extinguishing equipment. Before anyone could respond, Chief Reyes stepped forward, calm and steady. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm Chief Raul Reyes of the State Fire Department. I've already inspected the area. Your concerns are unfounded." Karen blinked. You're not with the HOA." "No," he said, smiling. "I work directly with the governor's safety office, and I'm also here as a guest. Karen's mouth opened, then closed. "You can't just—" "I can just," he said gently. "You've wasted enough city resources today, ma'am. There are no violations here. You're harassing law-abiding residents having a permitted gathering. I suggest you return to your home and enjoy your weekend." Silence. Karen looked like someone had poured ice water down her spine. She stood there visibly trembling with rage, gripping her HOA handbook like it was a holy relic. Then she turned and walked away. Not a word more. Once Karen retreated inside, something remarkable happened. Wasn't just that people relaxed again. It was that neighbors, her neighbors, started trickling over. Not just to watch. To participate. Mrs. Patel, who lived 2 doors down from Karen, brought over samosas and a cooler of mango juice. The young couple across the street asked if their daughter could join the bounce house. Even old Mr. Walters, who rarely left his porch, wandered over with a bottle of peach tea and said, "If this is the kind of trouble you cause, count me in." Turns out Karen had made enemies on every side, and now that she'd been publicly defanged, the whole street exhaled. The reunion turned into a neighborhood event. Kids danced. Elders played dominoes under the tent. Chief McNeil took over the grill while Chief Reyes helped set up a fireworks display. Completely legal, with fire safety precautions, of course. And Karen? She never came back out. Not even when the music rose. Not even when Emma gave a toast that left half the family crying. Not even when the neighborhood joined in singing "Lean on Me" as the sun dipped below the rooftops. She stayed in her house, curtains closed, blinds drawn. For once, silent. Just after sunset, when fireflies danced between the folding chairs and cousins laughed over spades games, there was a sudden mechanical hum from the far end of the block. It was subtle at first, like distant thunder, then unmistakable, the hydraulic growl of a flatbed tow truck. Everyone looked up. The truck rounded the corner and crept toward our row of parked vehicles, its hazard lights blinking, and its operator scanning license plates like a predator choosing prey. It pulled up beside a silver Nissan, Aunt Ramona's car, and started lowering its ramp. "What the hell?" Uncle Derek muttered, setting down his plate of peach cobbler. Chief McNeil stood immediately. "Nobody called in towing. This block isn't marked." But then Karen appeared. Again. This time, she wasn't subtle. She marched down her driveway waving a yellow form like a battle flag, shouting, "These vehicles are illegally parked. They're violating curbside occupancy rules. The HOA has jurisdiction." The driver, confused but compliant, pointed to the form. She said it's a private enforcement clause. "I got a request to remove any vehicle over 4 hours in front of her residence." That's when Chief McNeil stepped forward, his badge now glinting clearly in the overhead streetlight. "This is public street parking, son," he said calmly. "You got a contract for a private lot tow that doesn't apply here. You touch a single car, I'll cite you for unauthorized impoundment." The driver hesitated. Then Karen lunged forward, practically shoving the HOA printout into McNeil's chest. "This is a violation. You are allowing lawlessness." "You are not a public authority, Karen," McNeil said. "And this paper? Not a court order. You are impersonating authority and weaponizing private services. One more stunt like this, and you'll be facing actual charges." It was the first time she visibly recoiled. Her voice cracked. "You're all conspiring!" But no one listened. Not anymore. The tow truck left. Karen stood frozen, jaw clenched, eyes glassy. Then, in front of half the block, she stomped back up her lawn and tripped on her own sprinkler head. She hit the ground face first with a startled scream, her phone skittering across the pavement. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd, but no one laughed. Chief Reyes stepped toward her. "You okay?" She got up slowly, brushing dirt off her knees. For a moment something flickered behind her eyes. Not rage, but confusion. Defeat. A crack in the porcelain. "I just wanted order," she muttered, half to herself. "That's all." But nobody followed her when she limped back inside, and the door slammed shut. For the last time that night. The sun had long since dipped behind the oak trees. Someone hit the switch on the string lights, casting the entire yard in a warm golden glow. Fireflies twinkled above the lawn, and laughter had returned like it never left. Then came the big moment. "Y'all ready for the finale?" Chief Reyes called out. Cheers erupted from the kids first. Even the elders clapped as he and Uncle Leo wheeled out a cart of legal-grade fireworks, licensed, permitted, and packed for safety. Everyone backed up to the far side of the yard. With a loud whoosh, the first firework screamed into the air and burst into an enormous red and gold bloom. The crowd gasped. A second followed, then a third, shimmering green and silver. It wasn't a professional stadium show, but it was ours. Each burst reflected in the wide eyes of cousins, nieces, nephews. Brianna filmed the whole thing, whispering commentary. "And that one's for great-granddad. That one's for Uncle Lou. That's for when we finally stopped letting Karen scare us." The last one was special. A fountain-style firework that Chief Reyes had brought himself. A gift from the governor's office. It shimmered with blue and white sparks that fanned outward like angel wings. It lasted nearly a full minute. By the time the sparks fizzled out, no one spoke. It was perfect. It was peace. 3 days later, the letter arrived. Folded, printed, stamped with an official-looking seal. Addressed not to one person, but to the entire block. A neighborhood bulletin. A final gasp from a dying regime. It read, To all Glenmont residents, we regret to inform you that due to repeated violations of Code 14.3 regarding non-commercial gatherings and the disruption of neighborhood harmony during the weekend of the 5th, the HOA will be issuing new rules governing occupancy, guest vehicles, and noise ordinance compliance. And then the kicker. Effective immediately, outdoor events exceeding 15 persons require advance HOA board approval. People didn't just groan. They organized. Mrs. Patel made photocopies of the letter and taped it to every mailbox with her own handwritten message scrawled across it. They want control. We want community. Meeting this Friday. By Friday night, the town library meeting room was full. Not just family, but neighbors. Parents, veterans, renters, homeowners. Many, who had never attended a single HOA meeting before, and sitting quietly at the back. Chief McNeil, not in uniform, just present. Emma took the mic first. Calm, direct, legal. As a community, she said, you are not obligated to accept unratified amendments by a board that has violated transparency statutes. If necessary, we will initiate a petition for special election of new HOA leadership. She held up a folder. 32 residents already signed. A murmur of agreement rose. Then Chief Reyes stood, nodding once. The spirit of a neighborhood is measured by how it treats its people. You don't build community through fear and petty rules. You build it by listening, by celebrating, and by protecting what matters. Even those who had once sided with Karen began to applaud. The next morning, a typed note appeared on the HOA's website. Effective immediately, I, Karen Mitchell, resign from the Glenmont Homeowners Association Board. I sincerely hope future leadership will uphold the standards of our community. No apology, no explanation, just silence. Her house went up for sale within the month. The sign appeared like a tombstone on her front lawn, and the realtor's car replaced the usual code enforcement vehicles. By the end of the summer, the blinds were drawn, permanently, and a quiet couple with 3 kids moved in. They came to our next cookout with potato salad and a smile. The reunion wasn't just a party anymore. It had become a pivot point, a statement, a reclaiming. After the dust settled, neighbors started hosting monthly block nights, potlucks, story circles, movie screenings on portable projectors. The bounce house returned more than once. Music echoed down the streets again, but now with laughter, not tension. The HOA bylaws? Rewritten. The board? Voted out. In their place, a rotating committee of residents, not just homeowners, but longtime renters and young families, began drafting community guidelines that prioritized people over petty rules. Emma helped. Chief McNeil offered advice. Chief Reyes even called in a favor to get the city to repave the sidewalks. And every summer, like clockwork, the reunion grew. Not just with our family, but the neighborhood at large. We started calling it the Glenmont Gathering, a celebration of freedom, food, family, and the day we stopped letting fear rule our block. And every year, just before the fireworks, someone would raise a toast to community, to courage, and to never letting anyone, HOA or otherwise, tell us we don't belong.